basically, I had left off on the forbearance part. Okay, and that's the one was the moral character, and the second one was the virtues and merits, and the third one was the forbearance. So now it comes to the last course of Tao cultivation, is the propriety aspect. Okay, and then also I mentioned the fact that in the first moral character aspect, there was a mention about, oh, there's a sixth consciousness or the other consciousness, etc. So therefore, yeah, I hope that I will be able to explain that a little bit before the conclusion. So this way, since I have enough time and I'm not speaking as fast as last time, this way. We'll be able to probably will still end early, but at least we'll finish the class. Okay, so on item 4, which is the proprietary, that's the etiquette and courtesy. Basically, that's one of the 4 courses of Tao cultivation. So besides learning the proprieties in the temple, we have to learn the principles to achieve the truth. But the whole idea is this: the reason why they talk also about propriety is just as when lecturer Kai had talked about probably the last class in the Dharma class, he mentioned about the fact that, when probably the disciple Ananda had asked him, or maybe it may not be Ananda, but he had asked him about the Buddha before he, left the world, so to speak. He basically wanted to ask him, because if you happen to leave this world, that's Ananda speaking. If you happen to leave this world, then what should we follow, or who should we follow? Okay, what or who should we follow? And the Buddha answered. He goes, "Oh, precepts or propriety." I guess you just translate as propriety. So therefore, because after all, he's looking at it in the long term. Because when we start, because after all, we know about we have to learn about the truth, etc. And we attend the classes, and it could be tons of classes, including the Dharma classes, etc. So therefore, eventually, we come to the point of where we have to do the practicing aspect, and that's basically the propriety. And the propriety is the things that will last for a long time, because after all, even when Buddhism was Buddha was alive and basically taught, I don't know, about 49 years or whatever, and he basically said that the only the things that you should maintain, so to speak, is propriety, or the propriety aspects. So therefore, this way, he's looking at the long term, because after all, the first 500 years of Buddhism, there's a saying about that, and then the second 1,000 years, it's another saying, and the third 1,000 years, basically, he's talking about the fact that what the Buddhist religion will become, or Tao, or not religion, but belief will become. Because after all, it's when most people are basically, especially in today's world, so to speak. I mean, there is some learning, but yet most people go through, I guess you could say, the motions of their propriety, etc. So therefore, so basically, the whole idea of propriety is the fact that it can go for a very long time. Okay, so that's the reason why this course of cultivation is part of it. Okay, then of course, I had originally highlighted things in yellow, and then I found out that, oh yeah, there's more things I can say. So therefore, I also highlight that in blue. Yeah, blue, I guess. Okay. So anyway, so basically, he's saying the fact that the more people who do not follow the rules, the more rules there'll be, and it is true. Because after all, when you don't follow the rules, or bend the rules, or break the rules, etc., then of course people will try to, I guess, react. I guess I'll call it, to be able to create more rules. And so therefore, you need to be able to have some balance, so to speak. Okay. So therefore, as it says, goes over in fact that most important is the fact that there are different rules for different circumstances, and we must adjust ourselves to comply with the rules. So yeah, because after all, one of the example in the 15 rules and regulations, or that's the temple rules and regulations, the I think rule 13 or 14. Okay, 16. Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, 13 or 14, doesn't matter. Basically talks about, being flexible. Okay, yeah, and that's true. There is some things that we can do in terms of flexibility, in terms of the rules, but yet still, the principle of the rules still applies. Okay, all right. Then, of course, it goes on to say that, okay, we are all born with an ego, and there are times we feel arrogant and think highly of ourselves. But the worst enemy of a cultivator is what? Pride. Therefore, we must be humble. So, in terms of like uh, even the more character aspect, okay, you know, uh, uh, that also like emphasizes a little bit about humility, because after all, by being humble, you really learn to appreciate what others present to you or teach you, so to speak. And so therefore, so you have an appreciation for, or a thankful heart, so to speak, to be able to allow you to first know more, a little bit more, because after all, as a Zen, I don't know, saying has said, you pour a cup of water, and basically, if it's overflowing, what do? Yeah, you eventually, what you call it, you have to empty it and drink the tea that's in the cup, etc. Okay. Anyway, so the point is the fact that, yeah, you need to be humble, and of course, the worst enemy of a cultivator is the opposite. Okay, that's it. That's the pride aspect. Okay, then of course we come to talk about the actual practice itself. Okay, when we kneel down and bow, we are showing respect to the true or our true nature, or yeah, our own true soul or our own self. Okay, because when you have the word in Chinese, that's basically for the I guess being, so to speak, or life. Okay, there's a character that you see that has a two curves on top, and then a one, and then I don't know, a mouth plus something else. Okay, basically, so it's called Ren Yi Ko. So it means fact that, yeah, when you do a bow, you're bowing to your what? Ming, which is your life force or your life itself. Okay, so that's the reason why it also it also represents the fact that, yes, the fact that you have this essence or the Tao nature, and so therefore you are now alive. Okay, so also you need to be thankful about that or appreciative of that. Okay, going forward. Okay, everyone has an innate true nature, self Buddha nature, or self Buddha nature is, okay, it's in our heart. Okay, so true nature is the same thing as, like, we call it Buddha nature, same thing, or also self Buddha nature, same. Okay, therefore, okay, when we make bows to the Buddha, it is same as humbling facing ourselves and doing self reflection. Because after all, when you wake up in the morning, etc., you go through, you wash your face, etc. Basically, you have what is in ahead of you. It's a mirror most of the time. Most of the time, not everybody has a mirror, and so therefore, when you're really looking at yourself, you need to really think about the fact that, hey, I am a person alive, etc., and so therefore, how I conduct myself in this world, hopefully, will be humble and modest. Okay, and so therefore, just like when the you talk about the Confucius, when he was alive at that time, about 2,500 years ago, a little bit more than 2,500 years ago. Basically, he's talking about what's called the golden mean. Okay, so if we put things into practice without thinking and planning, it certainly doesn't meet the principles of the golden mean, because after all, you're only doing one or the other. You're not doing both. So therefore, if we keep thinking and planning without action, all we have is just a dream. Okay, that doesn't come true. So therefore, it goes both ways. You must have thinking and planning. Okay, all right. So basically, the next following is basically we say when we kowtow to Buddhas, because after all, when we are at a temple or whatever, yeah, there are icons above us, so to speak, and that's on the altar. And so therefore, it's time for to do our self-reflection, because after all, Zhenzi was also one of the disciples of Confucius, and basically, well, one of them, I guess you call it the main disciples of the Confucius. Okay, and basically, he is a person that constantly do a lot of self-reflecting. Okay, and basically, he talks about the fact that there's three things that he says. Okay, and basically, it's the three introspections that we've learned in the or maybe tested in those one of those classes. Okay, and so therefore, have you know you he asks himself every day, have I been loyal and faithful in my duties and responsibilities? Have I been sincere and trustworthy to my friends? And have I practiced what I have learned? So basically, ideally, in order to really be a cultivator, so to speak, yes, you should reflect those three things. Okay, always reflect those three things. Not only every day, but constantly reflect these three things. Okay, all right. On our journey of learning and cultivating Tao, we should know how to adjust and calm our mind. Because after all, the only way that you can uh, uh, resolve things, you need to have a, I guess you could say, a calm mind in order to be able to think well about what is happening. And so therefore, you need to have that calm mind. So learn to change the environment by changing the way we perceive things. So that's very important. Okay, because after all, um, as Holy Teacher mentioned in one of his scriptures, is the fact that, you know, when you look at the way you look at things, the way we look at the environment or the circumstances or the situations around us, etc. Okay, if we can't control it, then the only thing we can do is to change the way we think about these events. All right, and so by that, then this way you will be able to eventually resolve it. Okay, or to find a solution for it. Okay, all right, okay. Then of course it goes on to say the fact that rules and proprieties are help. Excuse me, sorry. Rules and propriety are help us improve and grow, and basically, which will mold us into a standard model. Basically, it's equivalent to saying that it will mold us into the character that we are right now. Okay, so therefore, it's like saying in the one of the Buddhists had mentioned about the fact that when you have the 15 rules and regulations. Okay, and he compares it to saying that, okay, it's basically like a ladder that climb up, etc. And so therefore, eventually, once you practice these rules and regulations well, then of course, hopefully you will attain Buddha, attain, sorry, hopefully enlightenment. Okay, all right, and then of course, when we are doing the kowtowing or the kowtowing, okay, basically it should be what? Sincere, and basically use our own spiritual light to enlighten ourselves. Because after all, we are bowing when, as I mentioned about the word character Ming. Okay, that's the in part yeah, in part D. Okay, so therefore, um, this is the spiritual light that we want to, because after all, when you receive the first treasure, okay, some people, okay, not everybody, but some people have said that, okay, it's like it's when your door is open or unlocked, I should say. Okay, basically it's like saying you can, if you happen to look at the door or open the door or whatever, okay, if you can, then of course it's like saying that you have a light that's in this first treasure. Okay, and so therefore, uh, uh, it's very small, only because of the fact that you just, I guess you could say, a beginner or newcomer, so to speak. Okay, when you receive the Tao, so therefore, through cultivation, okay, whether it's the four proper courses of cultivation or all the others, etc., then therefore the light will grow or become bigger, so to speak. Okay, and this way, sometimes when people talk about the Buddhists themselves, uh, when they draw or make a picture of the Buddha, so to speak, what is behind their head when you think about it? It's a, I don't know, orb or glowing, something glowing, etc. So basically, yeah, that's just basically to represent the fact that the the uh, the orb or aura, okay, has expanded, so to speak, and it's no longer just a small little light that's, when you got the first treasure, and it's now a big, much bigger one, etc. Okay, and basically that is basically the based on uh, our own cultivation. Okay. Okay, and then of course the last let's see. Okay, and the last part of it is the fact that, the movement and gestures are starting and ending are consistent. This is the spirit of Yi Guan Dao. Okay, when we kato, be sincere, because the purpose of kato is to what? To nurture a heart of respect, humility, and modesty. So basically, that goes what you call is part. It just repeats what I talked about, the humility aspect. Okay, and the the I guess you could say the group, I guess, that that we are in is related to the Iguan Dao, because after all, the Iguan Dao was uh, promoted by one of the groups in the Dao, and so therefore, so I guess. Everybody sort of like, I don't know, begin to relate it to it. So the whole idea of the fact that the spirit of Iguan Dao is basically just the whole idea of receiving the Dao, cultivating the Dao, and hopefully attaining the Dao. Okay, so basically that concludes the four topics of Dao cultivation. Because after all, you have first the moral character, the merits and virtues, and then the forbearance aspect, because after all, the forbearance is basically just to be able to continue on, etc. Okay, because after all, it is something that it requires patient self-control and also restraint and of course tolerance. Okay, so that's the forbearance aspect. Okay, and then of course the last aspect is the the propriety aspect. Okay, now maybe I'll first conclude and then talk about the four consciousness. Okay, all right. So in conclusion, we are all related to each other through humanity, because after all, it's literally in our blood. Okay, as a saying goes, no person or no man is an island. So we all have to deal with each other, because after all, we find ourselves in this world or this human form, so to speak. Okay, and so therefore we have, and of course, uh, there are people around us and like yourself. Okay, and so therefore you have to deal with everyone. Okay, given the fact that each of us has received the Tao transmission through learning, cultivation of virtues and merits, forbearance and propriety, we should take on the mission to benefit others. Because after all, in part two, was talking about the aspect of merits and virtues is uh, uh, lecture, sixth patriarch had mentioned the fact that, hey, you need to, the way he explains the word, so to speak, merit, is basically it's two parts, the gong as well as the de. And so therefore, in terms of the gong, he's talking about the fact that you need to apply effort to be able to eventually find your true nature or meet yourself. The literal word is to meet yourself. Okay, meet yourself or your true nature. Okay, or the Buddha nature. And then the is it equates to equanimity for all. Because after all, when you look at the, like the first in the 15 rules and regulations, what's the first rule of what's the first regulation? To what? Respect and meet, or esteem the Buddhas and saints. Okay, now after all, we all know that what each of each every one of us, so to speak, each of us is what a Buddha itself, because as Chancellor Lin had mentioned the fact that okay, we are all Buddhas reborn. Okay, so therefore, and after all, in terms of the human or humanity, or not on the humanity, but the I guess you could say the uh, physical realm. Okay, humanity is on the highest, is basically the highest level, because after all, they can through humanity one can become a Buddha. Okay, and so I mean, after all, you don't find a animal becoming a Buddha, or others. Okay, other things. Okay, so therefore, yeah. So because after all, we have this potential. I'll call it again potential to become a Buddha itself. Okay. And so therefore, all the other rules and regulations of the 15, once you understand that, 2 to 15 basically is just the character aspects or the forbearance aspect, and also the propriety aspects. And so therefore, those are like I guess I'll call it practice still. I still call it practice. And so therefore, once you understand the first part, then you will know what it means to what the sixth patriarch had meant about the idea of merit, or gongde. Okay, all right, and then of course the last phrase I want to talk about is the fact that say good words to others, find the good in others, smile, just smiling to others, we are able to transform our family, friends, and society. Basically, yeah, these are the first phrase, the two phrases. No, the first two, I guess you could say, they say good words to others and find good in others. Basically, those are things that Holy Teacher mentioned in the scripture, and the idea is the fact that if you can, I guess you could say, also transform your karma as well. Okay, because after all, the 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 karma that we have, well, we don't know it, but it basically will affect our character, so to speak. So therefore, yeah, the more we can say good and also find good, okay, then of course, we can, I guess you could say, minimize any negative karma that's within us. And then of course, as in the I guess in the first one of the XinMin, or the first year class, lecturer Amy had talked about the fact that, yeah, being, to smile, etc. In his presentation, something about the presentation is about down in the workplace, something like that. Okay, and also in the Dharma class itself, one of the Dharma classes, a holy teacher mentioned the fact that, hey, the whole idea that just by smiling, you can eventually, influence or transform, whether it's your family, friends, or society. Okay, so anyway, again, that concludes this presentation on this topic. And now I need to just discuss a little bit about the what we call the consciousness, because after all, even Lecturer Liu in the Buddha Nature class talks about that, and he basically just considers it, just calls it consciousness. Okay, and I guess it's a little bit appropriate. Okay, so it lists about probably 6, 7, and 8. Yeah, right. In the moral character aspect. Okay, so the first 1 through 5. Okay, the first 5 consciousness, I guess, is related to really the senses, because after all, you have the sight, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touch. Now, I list that in order of, I guess you could say, importance in terms of the human body. Okay, because after all, you use your eyes the most often, unless you eventually lose that sight. Okay, and then of course the sight, basically, after all, we use our sight to see far as much as we can, right? And so therefore, so that's the reason why it's the most important. Then of course we have the hearing, because after all, hearing is basically based on sound, and so therefore it's based on how much sound can travel, so to speak. Okay, or whether there's a wind blowing or whatever, then it can distort the sound that you're hearing, etc. So therefore, hearing is not as I guess you can say, not as far-reaching as sight. Okay, and then of course there's smelling. And smelling, of course, is what? It's still, again, part of like hearing a little bit. So therefore, is something that only we can do with our nose. And basically, I mean, we can only smell certain things that's close to us. Okay, unless we have a nose of a dog or a bloodhound, basically, well, their smelling is a lot more potent. Okay, I think, of course, and then of course the after smelling, basically it's the tasting, and basically that's only what, through our what, tongue. Okay, and so therefore it's very close. So only when we eat something, of course, then we can taste. And then of course the last is touching. Touching is basically same as the tasting, so to speak, because after all it's basically just skin deep. I guess I'll call it that. And touching is basically skin deep, because after all, yeah, you can only feel things that you touch, okay, with your hand, body, etc., or hand or body or foot, etc. Okay, all right. So those are the 5 senses. Okay, and then basically now I noticed I noticed that in the on the side portion, I put on what's called the occipital lobe. That's the lobe that of the brain that's in the back of, and I guess you could say back of the head, so to speak, or back of the brain, so to speak. And so therefore, that is sort of like I guess you could say, the part of the brain that deals with sight. And the fact that it has a whole section of it, so to say, oh, I don't know, it's a portion of it, okay, a big portion of it, that deals with sight. It goes to show the fact that sight is really one of the most important aspects of the human body. Okay, and then of course, after the 5 consciousness, you have what's called the 6th consciousness. Okay, basically that's parts of the brain that deals with this seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching. Okay, it has because after all, the brain is divided, so to speak. I guess I'll call it divided, yeah, into different parts. Okay, there's what they call the frontal lobe. Okay, and it's basically, or it's the same thing as uh, the front part of the brain, okay, so to speak. And then of course you have the temporal lobe, that's near the top, so to speak. Okay, and basically that deals with other functions. Oh, I'll talk about the functions a little later. Okay, and then of course you have the parietal lobe, and that's the lobe that's I guess you could say near the sides, so to speak. Okay, because after all, um, uh, these lobes are basically the areas that will affect certain things about the sight, hearing, sound, smelling, touching, etc. Okay, and then of course you have the occipital lobe, and that's mainly the sight aspect. Okay, then of course you have other parts of the brain, the cerebellum, the brain stem. Okay, so basically those are the parts. The major part, but of course there are other parts that's inside the brains. I guess buried in the brain, so to speak. And also, you notice the fact that our brain is basically has what's called two halves. Okay, because after all, when I was like when I was like in high school or whatever, when we were dissecting like a frog or whatever, and so therefore, when I dissected very carefully, and then I found out, oh, wait, yeah, there are two halves of the, there's like, it's like, so to speak, like ours, so to speak, and so there's like, something you can split it into, etc. Okay, so, the fact that, okay, because after all, a person I had talked to was a uh, neurosurgeon, or not a surgeon, but a neuro doctor, so to speak, that talks about the brain. And he was telling me about the fact that, oh, okay, yeah, um, the the right side of the brain basically controls the left side of your body, and then the left side of the brain controls the right side of the body, etc. Okay, so it's kind of interesting. Okay, and so therefore, and the part of the brains, the part that's called the brain stem, basically it's just basically it's the stem that attaches to the spinal cord, the cord that you have that goes, that the nerves goes to all of our body. And basically, yeah, and those that part of the particular brain, some people have mentioned the fact that, yeah, it's basically, controls a lot of the breathing, sneezing, coughing, swallowing, and heartbeat. And so basically those are like the mostly the involuntary aspects of those functions, because after all, technically we can control our breathing, that's true. Sneezing, it's a little bit iffy. And then coughing, of course, we can control it. And swallowing, we can control it. And the heartbeat, also same thing. Because after all, even when you hear about the some Tibetan monks that were, uh, were able to control the heart rate as well as the heat that's generated in the body. Okay, and that's very interesting because after all, is certain aspects can still be controlled. Okay, and then of course we come to the seventh consciousness. That's the generally it's the frontal lobe that deals with thinking. All right, and basically that's very, very generalized. Okay, because after all, what there's something called the prefrontal cortex, excuse me, basically that deals with like critical thinking, etc. And so therefore, I mean, the idea of thinking is the fact that in the sixth consciousness, okay, that deals with the five senses, so to speak, okay, or the five conscious, that's earlier. Okay, basically there are parts of the brain that not automatic, but controls certain parts of your body, okay, especially the motion aspect, motor aspects of it. Okay, and then of course, so from the frontal lobe, the think, the ideas that you think want to say, okay, I want to control, move my toes, so to speak. Okay, so therefore it goes to the back of the frontal lobe, so before the temporal lobe, and basically that I think the top part of it, so let's speak, will deal with the toe aspects. Okay, and then eventually, and basically, and then as the body gets more bigger, I mean not bigger, but more like I guess you could say move upwards, so to speak, move upwards in terms of the control aspect. Basically, the idea of like controlling your face, let's put it that way, is near the I guess you could say the parietal lobe area, but it's above the parietal lobe itself. Okay, so therefore it sort of like goes from the toe all the way to the face, and it goes down, so to speak. Okay, anyway, okay, so okay, then of course we come to the eighth consciousness, and that's what generally the where it talks about memory, because that's all in the Buddha nature class that lecture Lu presented. He calls it, I believe he calls it something called the storage. Okay, and but technically, the memory is really stored throughout I guess you could say it's not really in one specific part of the brain. It's basically throughout the brain. And for short-term memory, it's mostly in what's called the prefrontal cortex. So it's basically the front part of the brain. Okay, and so therefore, and then there, of course, there are other parts. When you talk about like long-term memory, etc., then of course it deals with like the hippocampus. That's inside the brain itself, near the center, but it's sort of like buried inside the brain, so to speak. Okay, and then the neocortex, as well as the wow, gosh, the uh, uh let's see, how do I pronounce that? Okay, amygdala, dala, dal, dalu, amygdala. Okay, amygdala. Okay, and then of course there's the what's called the basal ganglia, and also the cerebellum. Okay, so basically these parts of the brain are, it's part, for example, the hippocampus is located near the temporal lobe, and the function is basically learning and also memory. Okay, so that means the fact that, it basically is related to that. Okay, and of course, and then of course the neocortex, it talks about the cognition functions like memory, attention, perception, and basically it's the most evolved aspect of that brain. Okay, and then of course you got the amygdala, amygdala, amygdala. Okay, okay, all right. And basically, that's sort of like a small almond shape part of the brain that's still buried inside the brain, and basically it talks. It basically controls, like example, the emotions. Okay, and so therefore, the things about the emotions that we have, etc. Okay, so it's sort of like related to that. Okay, and then of course, the basal ganglia, and basically it's it basically controls like the I think the voluntary motions, okay, or movements, and also it deals with, it's part of it is the learning aspect and also other behaviors, and it's basically located again below the neocortex, but still again buried inside. Okay, and then of course the cerebellum, and basically that's sort of like I'll call it just below the four lobes of the brain. Okay, just below, and it's right above the spinal stem or brain stem, or the spinal cord, and so therefore it deals with sort of like something called the uh, I guess you could say it functions as sort of like doing the fine tuning of voluntary movements. Okay, maintaining posture, learning, and or motor skills. Okay, so again, so basically all these things are related to, especially some of it's basically memory. Okay, and then of course the brain stem itself. Okay, and that basically that's sort of like is associated with like something like our balance and also reflexes and coordinations. Okay, and so therefore it's basically I guess you could say next, or it attaches, sorry, attached to the brainstem. Okay, the spinal cord. Okay, then of course we come to the ninth consciousness. Okay, and I forgot the name about it, but anyway, of course it's not physical, of course, and it's not the brain itself, so to speak. Okay, and I basically just equate it to what we call our Buddha nature. Okay, or the true nature, same thing. Because after all, the Holy is calls it just true nature, but through the lecture Liu's class, we basically now calls it the Buddha nature. Okay, and of course, when you there are certain things to know about the what we call, I guess you could say, our soul. Okay, because after all, normally we refer to our soul is basically what is what the, the is related to the fact that, oh, okay, it lives forever, etc. But actually, it's sort of like a little bit more complicated than that. Okay, and so therefore, because after all, when you read the book called in the explanation for of the truth. Okay, that's the like a yellow, or yeah, it's a little bit yellowish book. Basically, it's called, oh no, sorry, the title is Explanations of the Answers of to the Truth. And basically, that was a presentation or a mini presentations done by the holy teacher when he visited. That was like a long time ago. And so therefore, eventually got translated through a Daokin because maybe perhaps the holy teacher had requested a particular Daokin to translate it, etc. And so therefore we now have the English and the Chinese versions of this explanations of the answers to the truth. And so therefore, when you read certain parts of it, especially about karma and also our soul as so, yeah, it gets a little bit more into detail. Okay. And so therefore, I hope that this class will be helpful in terms of, as you know, as I mentioned in the conclusion, most important things: say good words, find the good in others, and also you know, begin smile to others. After all, this way we are able to transform our family, friends, and society. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation. And oh, I forgot this uh, to preface the the presentation by saying that I need to thank the grace of heaven and the virtues of our masters and the predecessors and the transmitters that I have this opportunity to present this class. And of course, in closing, I basically have to, I need to remind everyone that, yeah, if there's anything that I said wrong, I hope that the Buddhists and saints will forgive me, and also the transmitters and lecturers will be able to correct my mistake. Thank you very much.